All right, well, welcome guys to the Tech Nebraska Summit. We're excited you are all here, and we're excited you're with us on this AI session about AI in general, but also bridging generations. Yeah, go on in the back. Oh, we have a spot right here. Oh, he's like, so like, she's calling me out. All right, guys. I'm Jisella Dolan, and I'm the moderator for today's panel. I have been in the age tech, aging, long-term care space for the last 20 years. I was on the exec team at Homestead Senior Care and learned a lot about the aging demographics and certainly how technology can help us unlock scale, solve really big issues around the globe with demographics and that shift. And so I've always been a proponent of that, and certainly AI is a piece of that. I now have my own consulting firm working with people like you, leaders like you, who want to solve these big challenges like we heard today about ag and how we manage food scarcity, aging demographics, et cetera. And I think we all know AI is a way to unlock and solve those problems. But we need to be able to master it, and we need to be able to lead our organizations into the future with AI. So we really, with these amazing panelists today, want to talk about how do we do that? How do we really take this concept that's sort of amorphous of AI, this term we're all throwing around, and how do we really deeply understand it and integrate it in a way that makes sense to the product or service we're building, the teams we're leading, what we're investing in, etc. So we have an esteemed panel with us today. We're going to be together for 45 minutes. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, and I know you probably all had your AI questions in your pocket. But what's great is that John, Brian, and Nikhil will be with us for the rest of the day. They'd love nothing more than you buy them a drink and ask them all the questions you have about AI. So I'm sorry, or 2 drinks. John needs 2, but he's got the best advice. But briefly, I'm going to introduce them, and then we're going to get into some questions, okay? Sound good? All right, with us, we have John Grange, the co-founder and CTO of OpsCompass. Welcome, John. Next to him is Brian Zimmer, the co-owner and chief strategy and product officer for Don't Panic Labs. And I think in today's world, we all need Don't Panic services, so we'd love to hear more about that. And lastly, we have with us Nikhil Madan, the founder and CEO of FluteSpace, and he traveled all the way from California to be with us today. So I think he might win the award for furthest travel, maybe. But give it up for the panel. So to start us out, I'd love to have each of the panelists go deeper on their background, share how they're connected to AI, what they're seeing, and then really, what do they see as the opportunity and the value? Of course, we're going to talk on the converse side of it today, but what do you see as this potential? And I think we're going to start with you, Brian, if you could share more about your background and your thoughts on AI.
Yeah, no, thank you. Like I say, Brian Zimmer with Don't Panic Labs. I think my perspective is a lot around building products that are commercialized on different technologies. So over the last 20 years at Don't Panic Labs, we have partnered with all kinds of different either entrepreneurs or corporate innovators to bring ideas to life or transform existing systems. And so especially 10 to 15 years ago, we were starting to use AI-based concepts in our systems. We were bringing things to life with machine learning and computer vision. So since it's the fall, since sports is a big thing, Leap Form, that was one of the products we created to actually track athletes while they were lifting weights using 3D depth cameras. So we had to capture hundreds of hours of athletes lifting, train algorithms to actually track the athletes and track it, verify we were doing it with precision, and then give real-time feedback and results. And so now if you go to Huskers weight room, you'll see that on all the weightlifting racks there. Other Division I institutions, pro teams, US Navy SEALs use that product. But since then, we've taken that product into healthcare, and over that time, we've actually partnered to build over 200 products with different partners in all kinds of different industries, a lot of them here in Nebraska, so you can think about industries we have. But I think AI-based concepts or intelligence, it's been a part of almost all of those products in some way. And what's been fun is just the journey and how the field has evolved. And I think the biggest thing that's exciting me right now is going back to some of those corporate innovators that I talked about at the beginning. Most companies have had some kind of corporate innovation initiative. They've went and they've validated problems, and a number of those things, they probably didn't move them forward. They probably shelved them because it wasn't viable or it wasn't feasible. But now with the latest Gen AI and other AI technologies, some of the advice I'm giving right now is you should go back and look at some of those validated problems, because now you might actually be able to solve them. And so what I'm getting most excited about is that, especially now, we can solve problems that we couldn't solve 5 or 10 years ago and make a bigger impact in the industries that we're working for.
That's awesome. So really unlocking efficiency and capacity within organizations to do more.
Yeah,
to serve
absolutely.
More. Awesome. Nikhil.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Nikhil, coming from California, my first time over here in Nebraska. I love this city.
Isn't it amazing?
It's beautiful. The weather is amazing. I love the vibe of this city. My exposure to AI goes back to about 15 years ago when I joined a company called Google. And
Is that Google? I don't know.
a small company. And I was leading a team of data scientists for the entire Americas region for professional services. So I had a bit of exposure to some of the early technologies that Google had in the mix. And what was interesting about the team that I was leading was that a lot of advertisers, for example, Geico, Unilever, L'Oreal, they would say that, you know what, you have these data science resources, but we never get exposure to any of those resources. So how can you bring those resources? We're spending top dollars with you. How can you bring some of that talent to us to be able to solve some of our business challenges? And their typical problems would be, how should we build the creative? What kind of customers we should be targeting? How should we allocate media? So my team was working with them to be able to help them understand, just an anecdotal example, whether you should have a cat or a dog in the ad. If you have a cat, how much CTR, click-through rate, would improve as compared to dog? And those were some of the basic questions these would have. But of course, I didn't want my opportunity to say that this was a guy who sold Google Ads. I want to do something more meaningful as well. So I switched, and I am now leading a company called as FluteSpace, that is a Gen AI company in radiology space to be able to improve their productivity. It was fascinating to me to learn about that 70% of the clinical diagnosis leverage some kind of medical imaging. For example, if it's ultrasound for pregnancy, X-ray for a broken bone, CT scan for a headache. So that's like the center of the healthcare system. And I wanted to make a big impact, so we decided to focus on radiology and bring AI to this work stream. What I'm excited about AI overall, I compare AI as more like electricity. And this is as revolutionary as that, where right now what we are looking into is that AI is going to get into almost every field and transform almost like healthcare, logistics, manufacturing, farming, everything that you name about. In few years, we won't say that whether or should we have AI, it would be a part of almost everything that we do. And the way I think about this is to be able to amplify the human decisions, identify patterns, and help us make better business decisions as well along the way. So I'm really excited about AI, really passionate about what we are building, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Nikhil. John?
And you love Omaha's weather. Not something we hear
Yeah.
not something we hear too often.
Fog was exciting.
Yeah.
Felt like San Francisco did a little bit.
Correct.
We brought it for you. John Grange, my background is, it's crazy to say, but for 20 years I've been starting companies, I've bought and sold companies, but I've really been in startups for 20 years, based out of here in Nebraska. And currently I'm CTO of a venture-backed startup that's kind of later stage called OpsCompass. It's cloud security and compliance. But I also have another hat that I wear, actually two other hats that kind of color my opinions and my kind of perspective on AI. And one is that I'm also a co-founder and a GP of a venture capital fund here in Nebraska called Move Venture Capital. We do pre-seed investing. We've made 40 investments, and we're sector agnostic. So what's really cool is we've made 40 investments, but it's everything from medical devices to maybe more traditional SaaS to, you name, ag, fintech, audio tech, across the board. And then also co-founder of Nebraska Startup Academy, where we have over 500 founders on our platform. So what I'm getting at is I see a lot of companies, and over the past 20 years, I've kind of seen what it's like to build a technology company, to building different products, raising capital, all these things. And what's interesting about AI is that it's changed all the sort of building blocks of kind of what it takes to build a company and have ecosystems produce companies. So the financial piece of it, companies need to raise less capital now than they ever have to get to kind of certain milestones. And businesses, I think we all just saw the big layoff announcements at Amazon, but also if you follow the tech folks on X and some of these other things, Amazon's aggressively hiring. So there's this reshuffle. People are thinking differently about what staff looks like and what these things look like. And what I find really exciting about it is that I don't look at it as like a doom and gloom situation where it's like, oh my gosh, like, is there going to be like work for people? I think it's like very clear that it's already generating like an increased demand for software. So even if on like a incremental basis you need, less developers, macro level, there's so much more demand for software because of like what you were saying, like what both of you were saying, AI kind of being part of like every technology platform that people are building. It's created this amazing opportunity, and we see it in the companies that are being started here, that we see on the Nebraska Startup Academy platform, that are able to get so much further with 1 or 2 people. They're able to prototype very quickly with AI, all the way to the biggest companies who are doing very well here, that are having huge secondary rounds and exits, that are able to now sort of re-platform their existing successful products. And now they're this even more efficient organization. So I'm bullish, but I'm bullish really on the overall opportunity is getting so much bigger for everyone.
Yeah, I love that, the speed of scale, especially for our founders in here, startups, thinking about the ability to connect and serve more people more quickly. Let's step back. We've talked a lot about AI already today, but we have a very diverse audience here. Not everyone is in the tech space. We have investors and a variety of government officials and so forth. And so we thought it'd be helpful to ground us on what is AI. It is not just ChatGPT to plan your vacation, although I would recommend that. It's really cool. But when we think about AI, what do we really mean? As leaders, as founders, as investors, as policymakers, what does that look like? Is this some new thing, or has this been around for a while? And Nikhil, I'd love to start with you. I love how you said it's like electricity. It's like water. It's this infrastructure is just... So can you expand on that? And I'd love to hear from each of you about your perspectives on what do we really mean by AI?
I get this question from my daughter, 11-year-old, quite a bit. She doesn't understand AI. She doesn't understand Instagram. She doesn't understand ChatGPT. But what's the essence of it? And if I were to explain to her, she plays chess. And I try to explain her through that lens itself. So there are 3 layers of AI, the way we think about it. One is the machine learning. That's like what we have seen before. And then there's deep neural network. And then third one is Gen AI, which ChatGPT is, thanks to ChatGPT, it has become commoditized. So if you were to look from a chess point of view, if we all know that it's 8x8 grid. If we train a computer to be able to understand all the moves which we have seen before, that's machine learning, right? It has happened in the past. You just show them the patterns and it's able to make the decisions on the fly. But what if you change the grid from 8x8 to 9x9? The pattern we have never seen before. That's more neural network, so you're able to make decisions on some of the unseen data and unseen patterns before. Now, if the third one is if you were to ask a computer to be able to create a chess, not knowing anything about 8x8 or 9x9, that's Gen AI. So that's the lens that I look at. It's essentially having the computer make decisions and identify patterns in that realm.
Beautiful. Right.
Yeah, I think Nikhil hit on it really, really well, and I think that's a perfect analogy for thinking about, artificial intelligence. I think, a mistake would be to look at just ChatGPT and say, that's artificial intelligence, right? It's really a lot of the things happening behind the scenes. Intelligence has been in products for years, and we've been able to advance the forms of intelligence that we put into it. ChatGPT, other GPTs that we interact with. Now it's much more salient and interactive, so people are much more aware of it now. But for me, when I think about AI, it's really the capacity of a machine to learn, adapt, and respond to the situations, just like you saw in Nikhil's examples there. And as we're able to use these techniques, machines are able to learn more, do more, and be more powerful. But we also have to understand some of the underpinnings and some of the limits as well.
You guys have kind of covered a lot of the good ground, so like, I'll kind of, to me, like I think one of the important ways to think about it is kind of deterministic versus non-deterministic. So the paradigm before with computing was really about these highly deterministic machines doing very precise things, and we've got these precise programming languages and things. And I think one of the things that we discovered with Gen AI in particular was that not being non-deterministic, there are some downsides to that. But when you combine non-determinism with like vast scale of data, like we talk about, everybody's become scale-pilled, as they say. It kind of unlocks a new way to think about capabilities, software, and I think that that's kind of like what the modern platform has become. We'll probably talk about it a little bit more, but it reminds me about like, you know, it's kind of just like a jump from like, going from like, you know, the olden days to like, oh, x86, you know, platform. So I look at like kind of the real thing that AI has brought as we think about technology and how we're building things in sort of a non-deterministic paradigm, which has kind of unlocked like a new, almost like a new platform.
Beautiful, great examples. John, we're going to stay with you. We had a great conversation as we were prepping for this panel, just about concerns people have and the speed of change and bringing people along and the kind of, you said, the doom and gloom, opening up, like what does this really mean and are we capable? And what was great is all three of these panelists, these leaders said, you know, humans have always been able to lean into innovation and tech. We think about things like radio to TV to, you know, cars and airplanes, TikTok, right? All of the things that we have integrated into our personal and professional lives and our organizations as leaders. And AI is another one of those tools and resources. And so there is this bullishness about our ability to navigate through that because we've done it before. We saw that with COVID, where we had older adults using tablets and things which people thought is not possible. So we really do think this is something that can equip us all to serve more and to lead our organizations better and provide more quality services. But let's talk about where you were going, John, in terms of what's the analogies of past technology that were very monumental that we've integrated in the past. So we can think about, as we move forward with AI in our organizations, how do we navigate the web or email? I mean, many of you probably remember, like, we never had email when we first started our companies, and here we are today, right? So will you share, John, about that, and then we'll hear from Nikhil and Brian.
Yeah, kind of going back to what I said about AI being kind of like the new platform. It you know, when we invest in companies and move, one of the things I like to talk to the team about is that, you know, we can't get too hung up on AI. There's like there's labs that train foundation models that are doing like deep kind of like AI research and stuff. But the rest of the world, we're building solutions and users are using software. We're like accomplishing things, and so. You know, if you were building a product in the late '90s, and you weren't doing, and it wasn't like a client-server-based product, if you were building on like a mainframe, you missed you're not on the modern platform. Like you're probably going to have a harder time raising money. Like you're not building on the modern platform, and eventually it just is, you look weird. Same way you fast forward, you're kind of in the mid-2000s. If you're building a company, you're out raising money, and it's like some old-school client-server thing, and you're not building like a web application. You know, investors are like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't going to be scalable. This isn't the modern way we deliver software. And so at Move, when we look at these kind of industry-specific software companies, it looks a lot like SaaS, because it's, you know, you log into an app and like, but there's AI on the back end doing a lot. And I would just say that it's because it is SaaS. SaaS is just like a software delivery model. AI is the new platform we're building on. It's very similar to when everybody started running microservices on cloud platforms. That was the new platform that we were building on then, and so we go. I just think that it's much more similar to other platform changes. I mean, from the developer perspective, think about, and you know more about this than me, but think about when compilers came out. That was a huge change in how software was developed and who could develop it and how much could be developed. So we have many examples of these big paradigm shifts. And they've almost all they all have resulted in just more software, more demand for software, better software. So that's my perspective on that.
I love it. Nikhil.
So your question was about how do we draw parallels
Absolutely.
with the... I'll go back to the same example about electricity. When electricity was invented, the phase one was just to replace everything that we had before with the new equipments. So for example, steam engines were replaced with the electric motors. And that's how it's like, just change the infrastructure, what we have. And then the phase two came in when you had electricity being used to be able to power some of the new innovation like refrigerators, washing machines and things like that. So the way I think about this is we are in a very early stage. We'll be talking about replacing a lot of stuff that we are doing just to make them more efficient. But I don't think so we have hit that inflection point of how AI could really become such an integral part to be able to create new workflows which we have never seen before. And I think for that to happen, people and process are going to play a much more important role than the tech itself. Tech is going to get commoditized. Right now, for example, electricity, we don't say that which electricity is better. They're all same, right? I think going forward, whether it's in OpenAI, whether it's Google, all these foundational models are going to perform at the same level as what we would expect them to be. So it's going to get like the baseline. But how you apply that will depend on the people and processes. And a lot of companies that are putting efforts into learning these technologies, being curious about it, and setting up the talent pool, as mentioned about the Amazon example, are going to succeed. Tech is not going to be the differentiating factor. It's the people and process that will make the difference.
Beautiful, right?
I think one of the things I always look at to try to understand new technologies and how they're coming up is Gartner's hype cycle, for anyone that's familiar with that. Basically says when a new technology is released, we have all kinds of expectations about it. We think it's going to do all of these things, and as it's adopted, our expectations increase to the point where that technology hits the peak of inflated expectations, they call it. And then we start to realize all the realities and practicalities, and we realize maybe it's not going to work in all these situations or do all these changes, and then we kind of fall down to what they call the trough of disillusionment, right? You hit kind of rock bottom.
Despair.
Yeah, and then as we're looking at that, we start to realize, okay, here's where it really makes sense. Here's how we can apply it and apply it in meaningful ways. And we go to this plateau of productivity on it. And when I look at the hype cycle for AI, what really strikes me is that all the technologies they have for AI, right? They have lots of different ones they track on that. There's like 20 or 30 different dots. They all say they're going to go through this hype cycle in 3 to 5 years. And that's an amazing pace for a technology to go through that whole cycle. If I go back and look at blockchain at kind of an equivalence time of its existence, it was being projected as going 5 to 10 years through that cycle. I think also with AI, as these different AI technologies go through that cycle, we can then build other technologies upon them. So they spark other technologies that go through that cycle. So the first thing that strikes me is, one, I think we've all felt this like fast rate of change that's happening. And so there's actually some data here to say, yeah, this is a little different at the pace at which it's going through that cycle and the number of technologies going through that cycle. And so when I look at that, going back to your points on people and process, we need to think about how are we going to enable our workforce to assimilate this information, to learn these things and put them into practice. Because with that rate of change, there is a lot to learn, a lot to figure out, and the companies that create the space for that are going to be the ones that can actually move forward in this time period, where others will be held back just because they can't keep pace with that or haven't made time to absorb that change and learning.
That's beautiful. I heard this great quote that said, the pace of change, the speed of change is the fastest it's ever been. Like today, this is the fastest, guys, and this is the slowest it will ever be into the future. I think it's what you said, it's all of you, it's not so much about the AI, the tool, because we've all had these new tools. You think about this as a tool, but it's how do we evolve, flow like water around this to enable ourselves as leaders to understand it and decide how we want to use it within our organization, the product we're building, the service we're offering with our clients, with our employees, but then bringing them along, right? Empowering our teams. I think one of the biggest leadership imperatives today is not to understand AI and tech, although that's important. It's to be able to understand change management and guide your teams through those as quickly as possible and yourself, and have them feel not fear with it, but that this is empowering. And to your point, we hear about layoffs and things. Our workforce, the people we're connecting with, are going to think, is this replacing me? So as leaders, as you build your product, as you connect with customers, it's letting them know that this is actually going to empower and amplify what you do as a human. And that's really exciting. So another conversation we had as we prepped for our panel was the dark side, the shadow side of AI, right? Every strength in life taken to an extreme can create challenge and fear and risk and things. We do have a cybersecurity panel this afternoon, so we're not going to dig into cybersecurity, well, that would be a really fun topic. But we're really just going to talk about high-level AI. What are those risks, those challenges as we think about using that with our products, our services, our teams? What's some of the pushback we might feel? And Nikhil said it really well, like what are those guardrails that we need to build within our organizations? And you need to have a proactive point of view on that as you start to enable it, right? So Nikhil, will you start us off as we think about that shadow side of AI?
I think it comes back to the biases that an AI can induce in the society. I'll give an example. When my daughter was born, somebody asked me this stupid question: is that, how is your daughter? What is she like? I'm like, she's just a clean slate. She has no personality. She's just born. She is just like a normal kid.
She's adorable.
She's adorable, that's for sure. And then now she's 11-year-old and she now has a personality, right? She's a gymnast and she likes to do music, compose music, and you can define her the way she is. AI is no different. What defined my daughter was the experiences she's gone through, the exposure she's gone through, the kind of decisions she made, or we influenced some of those decisions, is what shaped her present. And that's going to be the case in future as well. AI is exactly like that, because the kind of data that you're using to be able to train AI, the experiences, the exposures, is what will actually AI ultimately tell you. So the data is such an important part, and the biases is going to play an important role. How do you overcome those biases is a critical one. There is also this angle of the security. Credit cards are great, but the moment you had that invention, you had some bad actors also coming into the society who were trying to game the system and fool people around. AI is no different. As it becomes more and more prevalent, you will see some bad actors also start coming into to be able to harm the society, harm individuals, and gain benefit from that. And I think the third one I would say is around talent and skills. That is one. What you see right now, the layoffs, is not the layoff. It's just the repositioning of the workforce and trying to attune to people who are more adapt to AI or who has the appetite to learn new skills. So if you are not learning it, someone who is learning it is probably going to replace you in the workforce. So it's not a matter of if you should. This wave is already hit. It would continue to evolve. Whether you jump on this bandwagon now or later, you have to jump on it.
Right.
Yeah. I think building on the last point you were getting to, one of the things I think the most about is social equity involved with bringing AI into society. It's a lot like the digital divide and availability of broadband or availability of connectivity. I grew up on a farm in rural Nebraska. I was able to access internet when I was lucky, and it was slower speeds, right? Because the dial-up phone line, for people that remember that, right? And then I was fortunate enough in high school that DTN did a program and put point-to-point wireless in our area as a pilot, and all of a sudden I could get a couple hundred kilobits, right? And it was reliable, and now I could learn more and I could do more, and I experienced so much more advancement that some of my classmates had and some of my other classmates didn't have, right? Well, AI, it's a similar thing, right? Only it's probably much more powerful, much more leveling, much more complex to the point of those risks that Nikhil's mentioning there as well. And so as leaders, we have to think about with our workforce and in society, can we give access to everyone? If we don't give access to everyone, who have we advantaged and who have we disadvantaged? And also to the point of education, what are we doing to support the education because of the complexities around this? There was actually a recent survey of employees that were a part of like AI adoption initiatives, and 80% of them reported that they were having to learn a lot about AI on their own outside of work. And sure, to advance our careers, I think we can all point to how we have to learn things outside of work. But for such transformative technologies, we have to build that into our work or we will get variable results at the end of the day, or because of people's socioeconomic status, other life factors, some people will be accelerated and other people will be left behind. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to think a lot about over the coming years here as we think about our relationship between work, AI, and society.
That's really well said. Just to add on to that, this is about generations. It's part of our conversation today. And for the first time in history, we have 5 generations working together. That's never happened before, guys, because people are living longer. They want to work longer. They don't want to retire at 60. They want to contribute into their 80s and 90s. And so exactly where you've gone is how do we enable that change management, that learning for all demographics across, all age groups that we are leading, that we're bringing on, and frankly, we're serving as customers. How do we use AI in that way that really does bridge and doesn't make people feel like they're on an island and they're standing? Wonderful. John, please share your thoughts, risks, guardrails.
Yeah, I'll maybe even give a little bit of a counter to what I had said earlier about how it's business as usual, humans, creating technology and using it. To your point, the point made earlier about the speed, we've never had, I think there's a lot of practical limitations to rolling out and adopting technology. Like we actually adopt technology kind of slow. Like think about COVID with video conferencing. I mean, I was on Skype video calls in like 2004. We had all of that. There was GoToMeeting, all of that existed. There was really good stuff. Nobody used it really in a major way until COVID. So like that's like just part of it. I mean, you go back to like railroads. You actually had to go like lay track. Like you had to like move land and cut down trees. Like, and then not to mention all the other inventions. And then the railroads get bigger because they need to like move more stuff. Like these things take time. And like we took computers, which you used to have to like write machine code, and then you could maybe write some higher level programming languages, and we made it so that you can just like talk to them in English. So like overnight, that sort of, we've just not really had a technology that so quickly like applied to everyone. Like if you were on a computer and I got my first computer in 1993 and I was on the internet. I was lucky enough to be on the internet, maybe unlucky enough, but it felt better back then.
Yeah,
but it took so long. I mean, it was 10 to 15 years before you're like all your friends' parents all had like an email address, kind of a thing. So these things like typically take a lot longer, and this has not taken very long. And I think kind of there's a lot of you can talk a lot about it, but I think it really boils down to like you can just speak English to it, natural language, and build things, create things, and we've just never had a technology that just like applied to everyone almost instantly overnight. So I think that's something that we haven't seen. I think there's like a velocity there that maybe humans we're not like wired natively to deal with that in a good way. And then the other thing is the commodity part of it, the electricity, I think is exactly right. I mentioned earlier that the economics have really changed. And we see it with all the capital investment from the big companies like Meta, Google. If you look at like inference, so like when you put something into ChatGPT and it's thinking and then it spits something out, that's inference. So anytime we hit like a model API, it's running inference. Inference is like a commodity. It is not profitable. It's not like when we used to be able to make 60% margins hosting people's apps on traditional servers, and it was like a great managed service business. Like serving inference is like not valuable. It's like delivering electricity. I mean, it's valuable, but you're right. It's like not so then it sort of comes back to like, so what's valuable? It's the domain expertise. It's actually like the problem solving. And that's just so different than what we've kind of the economic models of technology companies and stuff and such have been in the past, that I do think like one of the big risks is that we've had, we built out too much internet infrastructure in like the .com era, and we had a recession after that. And like we've kind of been through these things, and this it kind of touches everybody and everything. So I do like that. To me is like one of the bigger kind of gloomy downsides, that it's like I don't know how this is going to work.
Absolutely. So again, it goes to how do we as humans enable other humans to learn, to be able to lean into this, to access this. I love where you went with social access. We talk a lot about the digital world, Wi-Fi, things being like water. So we have AIs like electricity. Being able to get on the web is like water. And we saw with COVID where students didn't have access to Wi-Fi at their home, things like that. So like, how do we enable the people we serve, the humans we're serving, the humans we're employing, the products and things we're creating, to really lean into this, and we don't have time to wait, is what you're saying. So let's get our crystal balls out in our last 10 minutes. This is exciting. Let's talk about the future. We know it's coming and it's here and we're doing some things with ChatGPT, et cetera, but John, I'm gonna start with you. The next 5 years, 10 years, we're all still very young, right? But the AI has evolved further. The robots are coming maybe. What's your take? Has anybody seen Terminator? But genuinely, what is your take on what you think will be happening with AI in those future, like 2030 and beyond?
I think the next 5 years are going to be a lot of us trying to figure out how to make these non-deterministic magical machines more deterministic, so we can use them in more situations. But I think we'll get there, and I think the longer term future is I think that there's been a lot of developments in material science and things like that. There's been a real hardware problem with robotics and a lot of physical technologies, and I think we're going to hit a sweet spot where AI gets to a place and kind of electronics and material science gets to a place where we start to see some pretty cool things. But I think we're going to spend 5 or 6 years figuring out how the economics work and how to get these things to be a little bit more deterministic at times and those sorts of things. But I think it's going to be, I think that we'll finally see some cool robotics stuff. We always see demos. I could see, we're starting to see it in investment, companies doing some real commercialized, interesting things with sort of the marriage of robotics and AI, and I think that'll be a lot of the drive into the future.
Awesome. Brian?
Yeah, I think agree with everything that John is saying there. I think the other color I would add onto it as we think about taking some steps into the future here is that there's a whole range of possible outcomes of all the things that could happen here. I think by and large the future that we end up in, utopian, dystopian, and all those conversations you hear from people, is going to be a reflection of what we value as a society and what our core values are. And as I say that, it might be easy for all of us to say, well, okay, that's being decided at some kind of Silicon Valley startup, right? OpenAI is figuring this out as they do their things. But actually, a lot of this is going to be about organizational leaders and the environment that they create and how they decide to employ AI. And as we redesign work, how do we redesign work? And so I think what our core values are, both as a society and more locally in organizations, are going to influence that future. And on the positive side, I believe this is our real opportunity to think about employee engagement and changing employee engagement. Gallup has tracked employee engagement for years, right? And they say that it's been over the last 20, 30 years, somewhere between 25% to 35%. I think we're back down around 30% of employees are engaged at work, right? We all spend so much time at work. It's always bothered me that only 30% of employees are truly engaged at work. And so I think our big opportunity right now is, as we redesign how we work, what tasks and activities we do, where do we keep the human element, what do we automate away with artificial intelligence, is to think about employee engagement first, because humans are always going to be a part of business, a part of society, and we should design around improving our engagement and actualization and put our core values into those solutions. And I think our opportunity is to finally start to move the needle more on employee engagement through this transformation process.
Awesome. Nikhil, please.
Talking about crystal ball, I took out my crystal ball 2 years ago, and that's the reason why I actually quit Google. And if that doesn't actually happen, I'm doomed. But I'm pretty sure about in the next 5 years or so, you'll see that there'll be AI co-pilots and assistants that'll be influencing or helping you understand patterns and make right decisions for yourself or your businesses, all around those things. So let's think about that, somebody who's influencing and it's sitting right next to you and telling you what you should or shouldn't do. So that's 5 years. And but the longer horizon is that how these AI will amplify you as individuals, as businesses, will start acting on your behalf as well. Where you just tell them what kind of outcomes you want, and they will go about doing their business. For example, if you had a credit card that needs to be paid, you don't need to tell AI agent how to actually go about and talk to the other agent on how to resolve that credit card payment. They will know your preferences and will be able to act on your behalf. Robotics is another example, is that you amplify your impact by having another individual, another infrastructure that's acting on your behalf and to be able to do things that you probably should or shouldn't be doing. I think the future is very exciting, but all of this has to be done in a more responsible way, because the chances of it going wrong also is something that we should be keeping an eye on. It's exciting, but I like to be cautiously excited about the future.
Love it. Okay, we're in our last 2 minutes, so we're going to do a quick round robin. I'd love your final thoughts for the audience on AI. Brian, we'll start with you.
Yeah. I think my final thought would be to just challenge everyone to go out and learn as much as you can. I was at a recent tech conference and I was trying to get people to talk a little bit about where they're at with AI on their journey. And I think it's really easy for us to fool ourselves into thinking we're much farther on the journey than we are, especially those of us that are maybe later on in our careers, because we're used to having a mastery of things and we're used to understanding things. And because of the rate of change and because of all the possibilities, I think we all need to humble ourselves and say, yeah, we have things to learn, and that's okay. We're all on the learning journey together. And I think people that truly approach it from a learning and growth mindset will be the ones that succeed going through this.
Perfect. Nikhil.
Talked about the future of AI, and I think it's very exciting. But the way I think about AI is that it's going to be everywhere, and we don't talk about electricity right now. It's right over there. It's taken for granted that everything that fits around us is fueled by that. And that's going to be the state of AI going forward as well. We all have to embrace it, but in a responsible fashion. And get on this bandwagon as soon as we can, because the train has already started. And I really like the way you put it, that we have seen the fastest change, and it's going to be the slowest that we see in future. And that's so right. And our generation is very fortunate to have seen some of those changes when we had the telephones, which had the cord, and then we had the pagers, and then we had the phones, mobile phones. And earlier we had cars, and still we are transitioning into driverless cars. So we are seeing some of that change happening in real, but it's going to be much faster as we move forward.
John, final quick thought.
Yeah, I since all sorts of good stuff was covered, I would just say that I think that the layoffs you hear about, as was said earlier, really employers repositioning their business and their workforce. And I think for all of us out there, kind of understanding that there's maybe beginning to be new sets of kind of skills and characteristics that are going to apply more to like the new world. And I think that things like curiosity, being high agency, independence, some of these things that used to like maybe be something that you might, if that was part of your personality, you might want to actually mitigate that a little bit if you're going to maybe be on a corporate track. I think that those sorts of things that many of us, again, like I said, maybe we would have to maybe hide some of that because you're trying to like get by in the world. I think there's going to be a real advantage to people being curious. I think that we already see that high agency people inside companies, it used to just be startups. Those people would start companies, but now you're seeing them getting promoted inside companies because things are moving fast. You need people that just go do it. You can learn it. You can go talk to a computer. So just kind of being mindful of like continuing to learn, but also understanding that like maybe some of these things that we thought were negatives before, actually like being curious, being independent, these sorts of things are now major advantages. So
Let's give it up for this panel, guys. They were amazing. I'm biased. For all day. 2 or 3 housekeeping things. So John's going to be my Vanna. If you're not a member of Tech Nebraska, we'd encourage you to raise your phones, use AI with the QR code, and become a member. Sincerely, we need all of us here, all different diverse leaders to move this forward. So the next thing is our next session, and it's what everybody's, one of your favorites, lunch. So that's at 11:20, back where we were at the beginning, the Capitol Ballroom. Please head there. There's networking, food. And just thank you guys for being here. It's been a great morning. We look forward to seeing you this afternoon.